Hi everybody, welcome back. Yesterday I was having a chat in my comments on one of my videos, Bloodlines, Timelines, Resets, Giants, Population Counts video, with someone called iCandleAll. Basically, very interesting chat, having a chat about the Cauldron Bible, and I've looked for it before but I couldn't find it for some reason, and now I know why. It's because I weren't spelling it right. But I got the link from iCandleAll. Sorry, I don't know if you're a he or a she. Sorry, so I just have to refer to you as iCandleAll every time. But anyway, so I got the Cauldron Bible and reading through it. It's really fascinating. I've not read all of it. Obviously, it's sorry, this is text. That's one giant page. But on the copy I've got over here, it's 855 pages, so it would take a while. But I did read bits here and there, and somewhere at the beginning I found there was other books mentioned. So there was a book, I'll share the link to this, but this is basically a book that has the records of the Egyptians, basically, and talks about them in their understanding of their times. This one I haven't read yet, but this is basically, I was just about to start reading. Silk, Druid and Chaldee. So this is about the early Britons, the laws and the ways, commerce and dress, a Roman invasion, basically the starting of the UK, apparently. And although I haven't read much of it, I just sort of preface and it goes on to say that British people were probably more civilised than the barbarians that we're led to believe in our current understanding. But I'll share these two books anyway, and obviously the Cauldron Bible. But the whole point today is I wanted to read a bit of this out, which is extremely interesting. It's quite strange because after having the chat with iCandleAll yesterday, I spent a few hours reading through bits here and there and here, and then after that I needed to relax, so I put on YouTube and Zen Garcia was already releasing this very same video that I was about to do this morning. But he's found different readings and stuff in scripture. He has read some of this I'm about to read, so I encourage you to go over there and listen to that and to the different parts of scripture that he's found and read out. But today I wanted to read about what is the Destroyer, or Wormwood. So before I do, there's like a couple of chapters at the end of the Cauldron Bible here. Before I do, the chapter before it begins, is called the Scroll of Kamushaha. In one of my older videos, I mentioned that back in the day, it says in scripture that back in the day, in Enos's day, that those that worshipped the sun, as in the sun in the sky, brought down its spirit and put it into their idols, their gods of stone and wood and stuff. And it was difficult for me to be able to explain what I was envisioning, because quite frankly I was thinking that they literally took the sun out of the sky, but you know, there's nothing really in history that talks about that. Now what I'm about to read kind of gives it a bit more of a realistic understanding, so hopefully this can show how the pagans brought the spirit of the sun of the sky, and placed it into things. As you know, nowadays we would, you know, if your AI had, your artificial intelligence robot had an area on its head and it gathered its free energy from that area, well then, you know, you could say that robot is spirit of the air, because it's gathering its energy from the air. So I imagine that what they're trying to say here is this, by getting the spirit of the sun, they're taking the energy for a form of technology and placing it into their creations. Like today we would do it into a robot, if that makes sense. So I'll read this anyway, and then I'll just carry on reading through all the way through the Destroyer. It's very descriptive, and it explains what we're going to see in the end of times. which is coming sooner or later. So, in this fertile black land, there are those who worship the sun, and they call it the greatest and the most bountiful among all gods, the seer of heaven, of the squalid manner in which men dwelt before the golden one led his people hence. He came to this fertile land, now its pleasant place with many great cities and contended villages. There is the great broad river of fresh water which rises and falls in its due seasons. Channels there are waterways which lead the fertilizing waters into the growing things, the herbage and the trees. There are flocks of sheep and herds, of cattle on the green pastures. It was not ever thus in the days before Herector came. All was barren and desolate. Naught divided the wilderness from the swamplands filled with reeds. Then there were no cattle or sheep, and the land knew not the hand of man. It lay untilled and unwatered. No land was sown, for they who dwelt in it knew not the making of waterways, nor did they know how to command the water and make it flow at their behest. There were no cities, and men dwelt in holes in the ground, or in places where the rock was cleft. They walked in their nakedness, or clothed themselves with leaves or bark, while at night they covered themselves with skin of wild beasts. They fought the jackal for food, and snatched dead things from the lion. They pulled roots from out of the ground, and sought for sustenance among things that grew in the mud. They had none to rule over them, nor had they leaders to guide. They knew not obligation or duty. None spoke to them about their maimer of life, and none knew the way of truth. They were truly unenlightened in those days. Then came the servant of the sun, and he who has brought the people together and put the rulers over them. He set Ramur up as king over the whole land. He showed them, man and woman, how to dwell together in contentment, as husband and wife, and he divided their tasks between them. He instructed men in the sowing of corn and the growing of herbs. He instructed them in tilling of the ground and the manner of cutting the waterways and channels. So these are the waterways we have now today, were actually made back then. He it was who showed men the ways of the beasts in the field. He instructed men in the working of gold and silver, and the making of vessels from clay. He instructed men in the hewing and cutting of stone. So, stones were cut and taught back in this time. Hewing and cutting of stone, and the building of temples and cities. The making of linen, and the dyeing of cloth that forms garments ever pleasing to the eyes, he did not teach. Neither did he instruct them in the making of bricks, or the working of copper. Then, when he departed, he bade the people not to weep, for though he went to his father, the Son would adopt them as children to all who would become sons of the Son. Thus many became sons and servants of the Son, and they believed at what they had heard, that the Son was their Father, and the light of the goodness, overlooking the whole land. It is this light that sustains all living things, but within it is a greater light which sustains the spirit. It is the light that enlightens the hearts of men. There are lesser lights that guide men about their daily tasks and shield them from harm. There are unseen lights that influence men for good or ill, but it is the great light that banishes coldness and makes them all warm. The warmth it bestows ripens and harvests of man and makes his herds yield in their increase. It oversees the whole activity of men on earth as it journeys the skies from one end to the other. Thus it knows the needs of all men. Therefore, be like the sun, be far-seeing and foresighted. Be regular in your comings and goings while you're about your daily tasks. When their guide and leader left, the people knew themselves as children of the sun. They were warlike and subdued other people in its name and brought them under its rule. The great temples were raised up to it, and for a time it displaced the greater gods which the people of this land had set up in their ignorance. The one true God it never displaced, for the true God was ever hidden from the eyes of the profane and ignorant. Then some priests among those who followed the rule of the sun stole its spirit and brought it down so that it enlivened the statues and images of their gods. Thus the spirit which enlivens all, and the lesser god, is but the one spirit held in captivity, and not what many people think. Then came the wise ones from the east, and they caused the people to have the other thoughts. They were men who knew the ways of heaven, and asked the people, "Is the sun spirit indeed supreme, or is it not a thing requiring much thought?" Is this not a thing requiring much thought? Consider its movements. Are they not more like those of one who is directed in his comings and goings? Does it move about freely as it wills, or is it restricted and held to a pointed path, like a yoked ox, or is the ass treading out corn? Does it come up from the netherworld as it wills, or to go down to the cave of darkness by its own decree? Is its path not like that of a stone hurled forth by the hand of man? Is it not like a boat controlled by the will of man, rather than a free-ranging God? Is it not more like a slave under the direction of a master? These things disturbed the hearts of people. Some pondered upon them, but others, in the manner of men, cried death to those who deny the truth of these things. However, because of the things said, the worship of the older gods grew in strength. For the people had never tuned from Osiris, who was with them before the first water channel was cut. He was not the god of the high but of the lowly people. This is a land of two peoples, of two nations, two priesthoods, two streams of wisdom, and two hierarchies of gods. It is a land where the light of Thoth burns brightly, though hidden away in the eyes of all but a few. It is the land of dawning on earth. I don't know if that is light of Thoth or what, but it just says KGHT of TMTH, and often it says bums when it means burns. I don't know how the R and the N got stuck together, but it does that quite a few places. So this is where we get into the Destroyer now. I don't know if I'll get this all out in this video. If not, I'll do another video following up. But just for sake of not losing my channel, this is for research and education purposes. Reading this, I doubt this is a large percentage of the book. There's very little left of the book in comparison to what I'm not reading. So hopefully I won't get a strike for reading this. So anyway, here we go. Men forget the days of the Destroyer. Only the wise know where it went, and that it will return in its appointed hour. It raged across the heavens in the days of wrath, and this was its likeness. It was a billowing cloud of smoke, enwrapped in a ruddy glow, not distinguishable in joint or limb. Its mouth was an abyss from which came flame, smoke and hot cinders. When ages pass, certain laws operate under the stars in heavens. Their ways change. There is movement and restlessness. They are no longer constant, and the great light appears redly in the skies. When blood drops upon the earth, the Destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ashes. Trees will be destroyed, and all living things engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land, and seas will boil. The heavens will burn brightly and redly, and there will be a copper hue over the face of the land. Followed by a day of darkness, a new moon will appear and break up and fall. The people will scatter in madness. They will hear the trumpet and the battle cry of the Destroyer, and will seek refuge in the den in the earth. Terror will eat away at their hearts, and their courage will flow from them like water from a broken pitcher. They will be beaten up in the flames of wrath and consumed by the breath of the Destroyer. Thus in the days of heavenly wrath, which have gone, and thus it will be in the days of doom when it comes again. The times of its coming and going are known unto the wise. These are the signs and times which shall precede the destroyer's return. 110 generations shall pass into the west, and nations will rise and fall. Men will fly in the air as birds and swim in the seas as fishes. Men will talk peace with one another. Hypocrisy and deceit shall have their day. So, clearly they had ships, submarines, planes back in the day as well. Women will be as men, and men as women. Passion will be a plaything of man. A nation of soothsayers shall rise and fall, and their tongue shall be a speech land. A nation of lawgivers shall rule the earth and pass away into nothingness. One worship shall pass into the four quarters of the earth, talking peace and bringing war. A nation of the seas will be greater than any other, but will be as an apple rotten in the core, and will not endure. A nation of traders will destroy men with wonders, and it shall have its day. Then shall the high strive with the low, the north with the south, the east with the west, and the light with the darkness. Men shall be divided by their races, and the children will be born as strangers among them. Brother shall strive with brother, and husband with wife. Fathers will no longer instruct their sons, and their sons will be wayward. Women will become the common property of men, and will no longer be held in regard and respect. Then men will be all at ease in their hearts, and they will seek what they know not what. And uncertainty and doubt will trouble them. They will possess great riches, but be poor in spirit. Then will the heavens tremble, and the earth move. Men will quake in fear, and while terror walks with them in heralds of doom will appear. They will come softly as thieves to the tombs. Men will know now them for what they are. Men will be deceived. The hour of the destroyer is at hand. In those days, men will have a great book before them. Wisdom will be revealed, but few will be gathered for the stand. It is the hour of trial. The dauntless ones will survive. The stout-hearted will not go down to destruction. Great God of all ages, alike to all, who set the trials of man, be merciful to our children in the days of doom. Man must suffer to be great, but hasten not to his progress unduly. In the great winnowing, be not harsh to the lesser ones among men. Even the son of a thief has become your scribe. So this is part 2 from the same great scroll that part 1 was from. I say that because other parts are from different places, as you'll see as we get to them. O sentinels of the universe, who watch for the destroyer, how long will your coming vigil last? O mortal men, who wait without understanding, where will you hide yourselves in the dread days of doom, when the heaven shall be torn apart and the skies rent in twain, in the days when children will turn grey-headed? This is the thing which will be seen. This is the terror your eyes will behold. This is the form of destruction that will wash upon you. There will be great body of fire, the glowing head with many mouths and eyes, ever-changing, terrible. Teeth will be seen in formless mouths, and fearful dark belly will glow redly from fires inside. Even the most stout-hearted man will tremble, and his bowels be loosened. For this is not a thing understandable to men. It will be a vast sky spanning from an ever-warping earth, burning with many hues, within wide open mouths. These will descend to sweep across the face of the land, engulfing all in the yawning jaws. The greatest warriors will charge against it in vain. The fangs will fall out, and lo, they are terror-inspiring things of the old hardened water. Great boulders will be hurled down upon men, crushing them into red powder. So, I think this is talking about firenadoes coming out So as you'll see when I get to more description, it explains that Wormwood, the Destroyer, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it, is a bit bigger than the Sun, and it kind of follows the Sun's path. So being on a flat Earth, it's doing a circle. But it comes from the south, which also makes sense on a flat Earth, that it's come from somewhere else, and it's blocking the sun, so it leaves a reddish sky while it's having its path, as well as filling up the sky with poisonous gases, making it hard to see. It also has a really loud sound that deafens everyone, it's just basically like a ball of fire, similar to the sun, but not as pure in light, but rather that you can see it churning in on itself. And obviously it's loud, it's spitting out fire constantly, it's destroying everything around it, it's killing people constantly. It's something difficult to visualise without ever having any reading of what people have claimed in the past of what's to come. But even reading it, it's still shocking, it's still quite scary, knowing that this is yet to come to us. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop then. Anyway, I'll carry on. And these great boulders will be held down upon men. These could be the great boulders that look like giant ball bearings that you see all over the earth that are now, rather than being metal, they're rock. Anyway, as the great salt waters rise up on its train and roaring torrents pour towards the land, even the heroes among mortal men will be overcome with madness. As moths fly swiftly to their doom in the burning flame, so will these men rush to their own destruction. The flames going before will devour all the works of men. The waters following will sweep away whatever remains. The dew of death will fall softly, the grey carpet over the cleared land. Men will cry out in their madness, "Oh, whatever being there is, save us from this tall of form of terror. Save us from the grey dew of death." So part 3 is no longer from the Great Scroll, but part 3 is from the Scroll of the Deafer. This is actually talking, I believe, about the days of Moses leading the people out of captivity. And as we hear in the Bible, the Lord was a pillar of fire. Is it a pillar of smoke by the day and a pillar of fire by the night? And in here it kind of doesn't sound as soft as that, but more end of the world type scenario. Anyway, the doom shape called the Destroyer in Egypt was seen in all the lands whereabouts. In colour it was bright and fiery, in appearance changing and unstable. It twisted itself like a coil, like water bubbling into a pool from the underground supply. All men agree it was the most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a loosened star, but being more like a fiery body of flame. Its movements on high were slow. Below it swirled in the manner of smoke, and it remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. There was a bloody redness about it, which changed as it was passed along its course. It caused death and destruction in its rising and setting. It swept the earth with grey cinder rain and caused many plagues, hunger and other evils. It bit the skin of men and beast until they became mottled with sores. The earth was troubled and shook, the hills and mountains moved and rocked. Dark smoke filled the heavens, bowed over earth, and the great howl came to the ears of men, borne to them upon the wings of the wind. It was the cry of the Dark Lord, the master of dread. Thick clouds of fiery smoke passed before him, and there was an awful hail of hot stones and coals of fire. The doom-shaped thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightnings. The channels of water were turned back to themselves, and when the land tilted, the great trees were tossed and snapped like twigs. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard over the wilderness, and before its burning breath the flames parted. The whole of the land moved, and mountains melted, The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony. The bright arrows of blood speck back and forth across its face. Earth swelled up like the bread upon the hearth. This was the aspect of the doom shape called the Destroyer, when it appeared in days long gone by, in olden times. 'Tis thus described in the old records, few of which remain. It is said that when it appears in the heavens above, earth splits open from the heat, like a nut roasted before the fire. Then flames shoot up through the surface and leap out like fiery friends upon black blood. The moisture inside the land is all dried up, and the pastures and cultivated places are consumed in flames, and they and all trees become white ashes. Doom shape is like a circling ball of flame which scatters small fiery offspring in its train. It covers about a fifth part of the sky and sends wreathing snake-like fingers down to earth before the sky appears frightened, and it breaks up and scatters away. Midday is no brighter than night. It spawns the host of terrible things. These things said of the Destroyer in the old records. Read them with a solemn heart, knowing that the doom shape has its appointed time and will return. It will be foolish to let them go unheeded. Now men say such things are not destined for our days. May the great God above grant this to be so. But come the day surely will, and in accordance with its nature, man will be unprepared. This is the last chapter. The Dark Days it's called. The Dark Days began with the last visitation of the Destroyer. They were foretold by strange omens in the skies. All men were silent and went about with pale faces. The leaders of the slaves which had built the city to the glory of Thom stirred up unrest. No man raised his arm against them. They foretold great events of which the people were ignorant of, and of which temple seers were not informed. These were the days of ominous calm, when the people waited for what they knew not. The presence of an unseen doom was felt. The hearts of men were stricken. Laughter was heard no more, and grief and wailing sounded throughout the land. Even the voices of children were stilled, and they did not play together, but stood silent. The slaves became bold and insolent, and women were the possession of any man. Fear walked in the land, and women became barren with terror. They could not conceive, and those with children aborted. All men closed up within themselves. The days of stillness were followed by a time when the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens, and the people became as frightened beasts without herdsmen, as asses when lions prowl without their fold. The people spoke of the God of the slaves, and reckless men said, "If we knew there was a God to be found, we would sacrifice to him." But the God of the slaves was not among them. He was not to be found within the swamplands or the brick pits. His manifestation was in the heavens for all men to see, but they did not see with understanding. Nor would any God listen, for all were dumb because of the hypocrisy of men. The dead were no longer sacred and were thrown into the waters. Those already entombed were neglected and became exposed. They lay unprotected against the hands of thieves. He who once toiled long in the sun, bearing the yoke himself, now possessed oxen. He who grew no grain, now owned a storehouse full. He who once dwelt in ease among his children, now thirsted for water. He who once sat in the sun with crumbs and dregs, was now bloated with food. He reclined in the shade, and his bowels overflowed. Bowls. Cattle were left unattended to roam into strange pastures, and men ignored their marks and slew the beasts of their neighbours. No man owned anything. Public records were cast forth and destroyed, and no man knew who were slaves and who were masters. The people cried out to the Pharaoh in their distress, but he stopped his ears and acted like a deaf man. There were those who spoke falsely before the Pharaoh and had gods hostile towards the land. Therefore the people cried out for the blood to appease it. But it was not these strange priests who put strife in the land instead of peace, for one was even of the household of Pharaoh, and walked among the people unhampered. Dust and smoke clouds darkened in the sky and coloured in the waters upon which they fell of a bloody hue. Plague was throughout the land, the river was bloody, and blood was everywhere. The water was vile, and men's stomachs shrank from drinking. Those who did drink from the river vomited it up, as it was polluted. The dust tore wounds in the skin of man and beast. In the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. Vermin bred and filled the air and face of the earth with loathsomeness. Wild beasts afflicted with torments under the lashing sands and ashes came out of their lairs in the wastelands to cave places and stalked the abodes of men. All the tame beasts whimpered, and the land was filled with the cries of sheep and moans of cattle. Trees throughout the land were destroyed, and no herb or fit was to be found. The face of the land was battered and devastated by hailstones, which smashed down all that stood in the path of torrent. They swept down in hot showers, and strange flowing fire ran along the ground in their wake. The fish of the river died in the polluted waters. Worms, insects, and reptiles sprang up from the earth in huge numbers. Great gusts of wind brought swarms of locusts which covered the sky. As the destroyer flung itself through the heavens, it blew great gusts of cinders across the face of the land. The gloom of a long night spread a dark mantle of blackness which extinguished every ray of light. None knew when it was day and when it was night, for the sun cast no shadow. So I'm not going to get this all done. So I'll come back and do another bit. I'll come back and do another video when I find where I just lost. I hope you, hope you enjoyed, and it's not too scary. But this is what we've got to look forward to in the future, unfortunately. God willing, it not being our time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next video. God bless. Bye.